Hi, everyone. Welcome to Oh, the Places You'll Work. We're excited today to have a great guest, Michael Wong. He is the founder and CEO of InstaHub, and it's a company that he started in 2016 to mitigate energy waste, which obviously is top of mind for so many young people today. The opportunity he sees is to do away with billions in electricity waste from simple issues like forgetting to turn off the lights. He graduated from Wharton at the University of Pennsylvania with a degree in economics, finance, and a couple of other things. And he had this hot product, which he developed in college. And he won a $150,000 innovation prize when he was at Penn. And he's won a lot of other prizes and accolades as well. And so we're really excited to hear how he got where he got.
Hi, Michael. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're so excited to learn about your experiences, things you've learned along the way. And I know so many people listening and tuning in right now are so excited along with us. So we're going to go into some rapid fire questions just to learn a little bit about you, more personal level, and they're fun little tidbits to learn about you. So first off, I wanted to ask, what are you surprisingly good at?
Predicting what will happen in a movie and sometimes even guessing what they'll say.
What are you surprisingly bad at?
Telling a joke without messing, without messing up the punchline.
An insecurity of yours?
Yeah, I'd say trying to be funny in front of a group. I think it's a hit or miss.
Oh. One thing on your bucket list that you want to check off?
I would love to take my family around the world.
Oh, that's amazing. Bad habit of yours?
I get really excited about a lot of things, but I talk a little too much when I get too excited.
And lastly, if you could have any job on earth, what would it be?
Being able to fund and incubate social entrepreneurial ideas, and then even building a business school where majority of the students gets funding to build a triple bottom line business models. So more than just focusing on profit, you're thinking a lot about people and planet. And then eventually, possibly become the president of the United States.
Okay.
That's so great. So we always like to start by just hearing a tiny bit about your growing up, what kind of family you grew up in. I know you're from Oakland. Just tell us a tiny bit. What was your family like, and what was your family life like?
My family, they were really, really supportive. Siblings, we were really tight-knit. I think growing up in Oakland, where I went to Title I public schools throughout my whole life until up into college, I think there's a huge contrast from how I grew up to where I am today, which is really interesting because that's a big growth opportunity. I mean, let's just kind of picture hearing gunshots, seeing crimes, or being a victim of crimes has kind of been normal, and not really wanting to learn or like education as much because I think there are a lot of factors that blend into that. But over time, I believe that great mentorship from my parents, where they allowed me to explore some of the curiosities I had, found additional resources for me to be able to try things out, but not giving up on me was one of the biggest things about my family. For example, I remember my dad just constantly teaching me how to dream big and be determined, while my mom taught me how to be patient and resilient. And my siblings themselves, they taught me how to debate for sure, but also being honest to myself. Overall, I think the exposures of how I grew up in Oakland has really shaped me who I am today. And being involved with nonprofit organizations have really offered me and a lot of other students who are underserved guidance to pursuing bigger dreams of their own. So I think collectively it has really created an opportunity for me to find my own purpose, which led me to building one company like InstaHub, for example.
Where did your passion for social impact and doing something for the planet come from? Like, you went to a green academy at Skyline High School, and so you must have had an interest in that, starting from a pretty young age. So what do you attribute that to?
I'll be honest with you, I never thought I would start a company related to sustainability. I think the exposure really helped. Being at Green Academy at Skyline High School, they taught us, renewable energy sources. They taught us how to calculate energy usage, and I thought that was interesting at that time. But it really made me think more critically as I went to school out on the East Coast and traveled the world and realized, there's some differences in the economics, the cultural aspect that make energy waste such a persistent but yet really invisible issue, whether people care about it or not. I would say Oakland, the Bay Area in general, maybe even California as a wider group, has its advantage in thinking about sustainability at a really young age. I think even probably elementary, middle school, we may have learned some things. I don't remember clearly, but I think that things have contributed to making it normal to think, hey, let's think about the planet.
I think that's such a vital lesson that you bring to InstaHub and as a CEO and co-founder, and kind of stemming off of that too. How did you get this idea? What was your light bulb moment for this idea that soon turned into a business and what it is today?
Yeah, so while in college, I used to stay up at a 24/7 building. I would stay up really late at night, working on stuff. I'm talking about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 a.m. in the morning, walking on campus, which they call Locust Walk. I would see these high rises with lights on all the time, and even some classrooms with lights on with no one inside. So it got me curious, and I ended up calculating, doing my best with the information I can get, how much energy is being wasted. And eventually I cold outreach to some people who are in sustainability, energy management, and even facilities operation management. And they kind of led me to a path and saying, hey, it is the way it is because of these key factors where I may or may not understand completely at that time. But eventually, I think finding certain mentors guiding me in understanding why it is the way it is and how we can tackle that really led to me kind of thinking of different ideas. So the first idea I thought of was a robotic device that snaps over an existing light switch. And imagine a little box with a motor inside that flips your light switch mechanically. So it's like a snap-on instant installation that does not require rewiring. That idea really stemmed with me researching and understanding that why a lot of the older buildings lack access or actual implementation of motion sensors like new buildings.
Mhm.
It's mostly pertaining to the cost of rewiring, hiring an electrician, and additional costs if it's a unionized university where you had to pay even more to be able to implement. So over time, I said, hey, what if there was a way to just snap on to enhance the existing infrastructure rather than replace? Inherently, there's waste to replacing things. So it's kind of a double pronged approach of, hey, let's save energy operationally by turning things off automatically, but also let's be mindful of how we do it in the transition of. So let's reduce the waste.
That's such an interesting thought process that you were able to think of and create. This makes me think more about how did you go from this idea to the physical product and what the branding that it included, the marketing and the connections you had to do, the partnerships. So if you could talk a little bit more about that, that'd be great.
Yeah, great question there. So from an idea to napkin sketches, eventually I solicited my idea. I pitched it to many people, and I went to the engineering building to find engineers and said, hey, can you help me prototype this idea? Eventually, I found my co founder, who is our chief technology officer. He was in his PhD program, in the engineering, and he had a master's in robotics. So it was something more of a passion project it started out with. And eventually the first funding I received was a few $1,000s from the University of Pennsylvania's Green Funds. So they have a few funding opportunities, and I would say they're really resourceful in terms of offering students the opportunity to test out their ideas. So we tested that out. We prototyped a couple of dozen of these prototypes across campus, and learned a ton really quickly. They weren't perfect at all, but we ended up applying for more things, pitching at different pitch competitions. There are things we won, there are things we lost. There's a balance, but the feedback has really helped us think through not only product, but also business models, social impact models, and actual execution or implementation. Marketing wise, my sister eventually had the overlap with me on campus. So she was helping lead the marketing efforts. And eventually, when we had the opportunity to be at trade shows and expos, that's where we got real customer feedback from customers who are looking for innovative solutions. I just remembered someone raising their hand and saying, Michael, I can buy 80 right now. And if 80 of these work, I have 800 buildings that we oversee. That was uplifting. It gave us a lot of confidence. But what we've learned was the real challenge sometimes is you cannot over-engineer a product. There's always a timeline. There's always a budget. Doing your best to predict that may not always be right at the end, but do your best to do that and get a lot of feedback from those who've done this before. Has really given a little bit more insights.
Do you think it's in your nature, sort of you were born to be entrepreneurial and found your own thing versus join something or, be part of something that's existing? I'm curious, like if students are thinking like, am I more the type that is naturally entrepreneurial, or am I more the type that is like something more established? What do you know about yourself that might help you figure that out one way or another?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's a lot more, I really want to believe that I was born to be, an entrepreneur leader. I think I really had a huge push from my dad in really just making me think and dream bigger. Pretend that there were no resource constraints. Don't make any excuses. Just move that aside, control what you can control. That plus experiencing the inequities in this world, locally and across the world, has led me to ask why. And having the opportunity to, talk and have intellectual discussions with my siblings about why aspect dives into beyond philosophy, but into sociology, psychology, in a interdisciplinary way to a point where it's almost as if we were trying to figure out how to solve the world's issue, which is not really realistic, right? But it's a very thought-provoking exercise that led me to believe that, hey, it is possible. Anything's possible, right? All these different experiences has led me to wanting to help move the needle a little bit, even if it's not completely solving that problem, but making an impact by doing my best to solving that problem. I think it comes from the exercising of just thinking critically and not being punished for thinking critically, into trying things out and being curious and trying to align your interests with the purpose of, and that purpose can change time over time. Data has led me to build confidence in the problem that we are addressing. And then additional data and talking to more people has led me to finding confidence of, hey, we are building something that can make a huge impact. I think it's a combination of things, but I think it is more behavioral and conditional, depending on who we interact with and how we kind of grew up sometimes, or the exposure and the experiences that we have as well.
As a journalist who's talked to a lot of entrepreneurs, that it's always a journey that has high highs and low lows. Can you tell us about a time when something didn't go well for you?
Sometimes the idea that you have can become something completely different or similar, but not the exact way that you envisioned it. And I think that's okay. It took me a while to come in terms to that. For example, when we pivot that first product idea I just told you earlier, we pivoted to a second product that is more of an Internet of Things, multi-sensor device that plugs into any outlet, and it automatically sends data to the cloud, and it uses AI to identify energy waste patterns like excessive heating, cooling, miscalibrated thermostat, and so forth. I never would have imagined that product without talking to more and more people, getting more feedback on what are bigger problems in their mind that they're prioritizing. I thought we would excel way faster than where I thought we would have. You have to be patient. That's where what I learned from my mom, being patient, resilient, but also don't give up on dreaming big, even if your existing resource kind of guides your existing progress in a certain way. But over time, I had to develop a certain skill set to choose and make the decision myself, and an executive decision that, hey, you know what? Thank you for that advice in my mind. I think this advice really ties into these certain conditions. And then eventually you will come. I've ran across many people who said, hey, Michael, I think you're not growing fast enough as a startup. You should call it quits. I've heard of multiple things, even from people you may trust as well, and they may be well intended and some may not be. But navigating that, I think those are really, like, it can really hurt your confidence as an entrepreneur hearing that even once. I'd say those are, examples of down points, but the high points are definitely where you get additional confidence of, hey, a customer bought this because it solves their problem. Hey, investors are potentially interested because it aligns with certain investment criteria, but also their mission. Hey, maybe you win a prize here and there. Those are like little, initially it was really big. It was like amazing. I had a boost of confidence, but when you're operating and building the business over time, you kind of forget about that over time, and you really focus on that. So then sometimes good feedback once in a while from different people can really boost my confidence. But I think building the product with the team and customers really seeing value and iterating it with us has been really uplifting.
It makes me think about how hard it must be being a CEO in itself, but also a younger CEO. So I just wanted to ask, do you ever face some imposter syndrome or self-doubt, something that is hard and hurts on your confidence? And how did you kind of get out of that or continue to try to keep your confidence level up and keep doing what you love to do?
Oh my God, I felt that while in college as well. And I think, finishing college was even an uphill battle. And being able to do so was an example data point of, hey, I was able to complete something. And that was a data point for myself. Anything else that I do, I should be able to complete what I envisioned and what I went out there for. One of the hardest decisions I made in college was to not accept my full-time offer in New York, where I think it would have been a safe opportunity to build wealth for family as well, but to pursue an idea without any customers, without any significant funding. Like, this is before winning that President's Innovation Prize at the University of Pennsylvania. And that took a lot of courage, but confidence in myself. It takes a lot of discipline. And then sometimes finding inspiration and motivation, talking to different people can help as well. So it's still an ongoing journey. And no matter how far we think we are, there will always be ups and downs. So keeping it realistic.
I loved just your point of view with making bold decisions and how much trust you have to have with the process. Also, that learning is not linear. But now that we're towards the end of our podcast, we always love to end it out with a question that we ask. And it's kind of niche, but it gives us a better idea about you and as a person. If you could choose one superpower out of all of the choices in your day-to-day life and work, what would you choose?
Telepathy could be really practical, because if I could read people's mind, the hardest thing for an entrepreneur is to always get a maybe and not a yes or no. If you get a yes, it's good. If you get a no, it's also good, because you're not chasing around in circles. all that ties to the theme of saving time for not only myself, but everyone around me in the process.
But I suspect a lot of the life you live as an entrepreneur is like lived in the maybe region, because you're always having to convince people and convince them to give you more money. And so that's also where patience comes in, I bet.
Exactly. Wow, that's perfect. You tied it well in first full circle.
And I'm super inspired by someone who's trying to do something that's both kind of ambitious, but is also like has a social mission. We need more of that. And that's really exciting for all of us, especially as we face the kind of challenges we're facing right now with our planet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. And I envision that, the way to do business is beyond profits. It's people and planet. And I think we're starting to see a trend for that, but I do agree with you, and I'm excited for that. I'm hopeful, very hopeful.
Great to hear your story. Very inspiring.
Thank you so much for talking with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.